I am going to talk a bit about top-down spiritual awakenings, what they are, what they look like, and most importantly, what to do if you are experiencing one. Many people don't realize that there are a lot of different kinds of spiritual awakening. And what is most important about that is that, although that is interesting in and of itself, is that it can be helpful to understand what type or category of spiritual awakening we are experiencing. Because, first of all, it is helpful to see ourselves reflected, to understand that, first of all, we are not the only person to undergo spiritual awakening, and also to see that we are not the only person to experience the type of spiritual awakening that we are having. Second, and perhaps most significantly, spiritual awakening, while we are undergoing it, introduces a state of imbalance in the body. And by understanding what type of spiritual awakening you are undergoing, you can understand the best way to heal, to come out of that state of imbalance, and even how to progress spiritually. So if you are somebody who is looking to become more conscious, more evolved, more, more spiritual, whatever term that you might want to put onto it, more whole is a wonderful one. By being able to honestly see what category you are in, you can really look at that and from that take, what do I really need to focus on? What do I really need to heal? What do I need to look at or work on in order to become more conscious or to, just feel a bit better? Um, so a lot of people don't recognize as well that top-down awakenings are the most experienced type of sudden spiritual awakening or intense spiritual awakening. In my book, The Spiritual Awakening Guide, I separate it out into gradual awakenings and sudden awakenings. In gradual awakenings, that is sort of like our ability to take step by step on the spiritual path. Maybe we take a course in Reiki or read a book in spirituality or esotericism or a self-help book. Maybe we take a course, maybe we start meditating, or maybe we just develop an interest in spirituality and start to kind of follow our intuition or follow, kind of things going step by step. And so that is a gradual awakening in which we are able to take that step by step. And most importantly, that step by step often feels quite life affirming. It feels quite helpful and it can be integrated by the system well. What happens in more sudden awakenings is that we might have a shift in perspective that is so sudden, or a release of some trauma pattern that we've been living out in quite short order. And what that means is that we kind of get a little bit of spiritual emotional whiplash. We suddenly may look at our lives, our jobs, our spouses or partners, what we are doing with ourselves, and have this sudden perspective of like, oh shoot, I need to change a bunch of stuff, or this isn't working for me, or wow, this is coming up because it's unhealed. I really need to take care of this. And so some of the more sudden awakenings are top down, which I'm going to talk about, Kundalini awakening, which is more famous, but it's actually much more rare. And things like religious awakenings, occult awakenings, and some of the other kind of awakenings that can be a bit more intense. And the way I differentiate this between gradual and the more intensive awakenings is that with the more intensive awakenings, there is an unfolding in the system Basically, stuff comes up in the system spontaneously. We often feel drawn to things as if we need to do them or have that strong intuitive urge to do them, rather than feeling kind of more in the driver's seat. The simplest way to differentiate them is that in gradual awakenings, it is really kind of that step-by-step process, where in sudden awakenings, it feels to people more like a part-time job or a full-time job. So with gradual awakenings, we may decide of our own volition to put a couple hours in to read that new book, or maybe to take a new course or learn how to garden, or, something like that. And in sudden or more intensive awakenings, like top-down awakenings, stuff is happening in our lives to an extent that we can't ignore it, and it becomes basically like a part-time, or in some cases, with the more intensive awakenings, like Kundalini awakenings, like shamanic awakenings, where it can basically turn into a very full-time job or sort of take over your life a bit. I will say for a certain percentage of people experiencing top-down awakenings, it is that full-time or more than full-time job. But in most cases, it is more like a part-time job, if I'm going to be, kind of pragmatic about it. So what is a top-down awakening? A Kundalini awakening is a bottom-up awakening. It is an awakening of that latent energy held within our sacrum that flows through our midline. And in doing that, it brings up a bunch of our stuff. That's at least what happens at first. A bunch of our trauma and that sort of stuff. It just sort of clears out our midline. A top-down awakening is an awakening going from the top down. So basically what energetically happens in this scenario is that the third eye and crown chakras and all of the, kind of sensory gateways of the head have a bunch of extra energy in them. And so for those of you who have learned from me before or have read some of my work, you know that I will, you may have heard that I have said before that when I look at people, a lot of people, I jokingly refer to them as lollipops. And that is not diminishing or anything like that. It is just that in our culture, in our Western culture, we have a tendency to have a lot of energy in our head and not much energy in our bodies. So not much energy from the neck down. In top-down awakenings, this is extremely exacerbated. So it's like having that energy in that head, that lollipop there, but magnified fivefold, tenfold, in some cases 50 or 500-fold. There can be so much energy in the head, and it does create significant imbalance. So I am going to talk about symptoms as they present in really severe cases. And this is only a small percent of people who are experiencing top-down awakening will experience such severity. But if we can understand the really severe cases of imbalance, where it's kind of that 500-fold, where there's so much energy in the head, it's kind of like a black hole, or something like that, we can start to take it back and understand what somebody who's having a certain amount of imbalance or a top-down awakening commonly presents at. So again, this is kind of the severe end of top-down awakenings. And severe top-down awakenings, people may feel or may experience being extremely disassociated or distanced from reality. They may be completely in a fantasy world of their own creation. Um, they are likely to be energetically outside of their body. And so the psychological term for this is disassociated. But in energy work, we can talk about where somebody actually is energetically. Are they in their bodies fully? Are they fully embodied? Is their energy just in their head? Is it like they are basically standing on their shoulders and all of their energy is above them, which is a common top-down phenomena or energy sort of picture? Is their energy in their field, but it might be kind of to the right side of them, to the left, slightly behind them, or slightly in front of them? In those cases where the energy is still in the field, the person may the person will commonly report feeling like they are not participating in their own life. They will not feel present in their own life. They will kind of feel like they're in the sidelines of their own life. And that is because energetically they are. In order for us to fully participate in life, we need to be in our bodies a bit more. We don't need to be 100% embodied, but we do need to have some energy kind of below the neck. Other symptoms include an exacerbation of mental health issues. And so somebody who only opens their third eye or does a meditation where they're bringing all of their focus there for a long period of time, or in certain cases, there are certain drugs or substances that can create a top-down awakening. And what happens in the most severe cases is a picture of mania or psychosis, or kind of what we would put under delusions of grandeur. So somebody believing that they are Jesus or Buddha, and not in like kind of a hippie oneness, like within all of us is the divine, look, I'm Buddha, we're all Buddha, and that kind of naive sort of sense of, look, we're all special sort of way, but like in a truly believing that they are Jesus, that they are a prophet or something like that. And so when you're hearing me and when I'm hearing myself, you might be like, well, there are some prophets, there are some people of our generation that truly are meant to, lead us spiritually and emotionally and physically. And my thought about that is like, great. Whatever you are, whoever you think you are, whatever you believe in your heart, that is wonderful. But are you feeling in a state of balance? So in my work as a spiritual worker, if somebody comes to me and they tell me that they secretly believe that they are an alien or an earth angel, or that they're from the 12th dimension, or whatever is going on here, my job is not to judge them, because in spiritual work, we do not want to cut down on wonder. We know that all sorts of weird, energetic, spiritual origins and experiences can and do happen, including things that commonly create a state of imbalance in the body. For example, channeling, mediumship, all of these things, psychic abilities, all of these sorts of things that can naturally create a top-down awakening. And so my objective isn't to talk people out of that or, anything like that. What it is to look at then, okay, you are whatever you are, you had whatever origin story or whatever part of you feels like, however you're feeling, whatever your experience is that interfering in any way you living a human, healthy, loving existence? Is that preventing you from connecting to yourself, connecting to other people, connecting to the world, feeling like you belong here, like you are worthwhile? Is there any trauma that you have experienced as a result of feeling other or being on a different wavelength than other people? And so that may seem like an aside, hopefully an interesting one, because I do realize I get a lot of questions about, things like what does a spiritual worker actually do? I realize that my day gig is can be quite interesting to some people. And so what I will say about that is that um, there is very much a balance being a spiritual worker in the modern world of realizing that all of this stuff can and does happen. There are all sorts of strange spiritual experiences that we can have here that in our very narrow materialist view of reality, we will even scoff at the slightest amount of thought of energetic or spiritual happening. Anything that we can't see under a microscope will be like, oh, you're crazy. But one of the things that I very much hope to bring to this world is that somebody can be quite sane and quite balanced and experience a spiritual awakening at the same time. That actually should be, and I rarely use the term should be, but that should be the result of going through a spiritual awakening experience. That you are actually saner and more grounded and more connected than most people. Just as an aside, I always talk about people about the concept of normalcy and how, if we were to talk about what a state of normalcy would be, it would be kind of like a state of emotional repression and a lack of awareness. And so if that really defines what normalcy is, most of us probably wouldn't want to be normal, so to speak. And so, with all of these spiritual awakenings, especially a top-down awakening, if somebody has a rich inner fantasy life, if that has been a coping mechanism for them for a long time, my objective is not to get them to stop going to their inner Sherlock Holmes, magic palace. It isn't to stop for them, watching whatever the latest fantasy show is on, HBO or Max or whatever it's calling itself, or to stop being imaginative and creative. We do try to stamp down and stamp out all of those qualities, the imagination, curiosity, fantasy, that are just so natural and inherent, that sense of play that we experience as children, that we can return to in a balanced spiritual state. But when we look at states of extreme top-down awakening, somebody is participating in fantasy in such a way that it is destructive to their life. And so somebody may be completely isolating themselves. They may believe in all sorts of odd conspiracy theories or things that make them feel very other, make them feel as if they're the only one, either in a special way, I'm a Buddha, or in a way in which they feel like they are being targeted or singled out. And typically, this is an exacerbation of childhood trauma. Uh, when people really sink into really deep conspiracy theory sort of things, it almost always has to do with a childhood feeling of not belonging and of feeling othered. And kind of going into those conspiracy theories, into those fantasies, can let them play that out. And so there's always a question, not of what the person is experiencing because spiritual experiences can be more extreme, more miraculous, more interesting, more weird, whatever terms you want to put onto it, than like I would say like what is presented out there is probably only, 5% of the possibilities of what truly can happen during spiritual awakening. But during that top-down awakening, it will take somebody away from the world energetically, spiritually, instead of connecting them more to the world. So the person that is experiencing a top-down awakening often comes from a background of being quite sensitive or maybe even psychic. And so in my book, Managing Psychic Abilities, I kind of, in some ways, I suppose, de-romanticize psychic abilities. And I just talk about it as if, somebody in the normal range of limits walks into a room and notices 10 things, then people who might be defined as psychic might notice 20 or 50 or 500 or 5,000, depending on the psychic. And so understanding psychic abilities in this way can be really helpful, because it could bring it back to a thought of sensory overload and what is energetically going on in the body. A lot of times, incredibly sensitive people have restricted their energy, they have shielded their energy, they've attempted to block energy. And the true answer over time to managing psychic abilities is to learn how to be in the body and to energetically let things flow through your system rather than to like puzzle all of them out. So people who are at the extremes of top-down awakenings will often have the portals of the head overstimulated. So what does this mean? It means that they may get frequent headaches or migraines at third eye or at temples. Um, it may mean ears are overloaded, so a lot of, kind of high-pitched noises or different noises in the ears, sometimes earworms. Those are always fun to get, where you naturally hear a song or word, kind of over and over again. It can also be a lot of eye-related symptoms, physical eye-related symptoms. So that can be just like pain or overload. Um, the reason that I love the term portals of the head is, first of all, because it's one of those like esoteric terms that you run across and you're just like, oh, wow, I like that term. Um, but it also brings in the thought that our eyes, our ears, our sense of smell, taste, all of our senses, all of our sensory organs are portals energetically. And so specifically for the eyes and ears, it is quite easy for those portals to become overloaded and to try to protect themselves by closing. This happens less often with smell and taste. It can happen, but it happens much, much less often. One of the most significant things about the physical eyes is that they are a way to transmit energy. And so people who have awakened from the bottom up, um, when you look at their eyes, there will be light in them. There will be, all of that energy flow that comes out, and through them that is being transmitted to you, not in a bad way, just in a, oh, I can recognize something about this person is perhaps a bit different. At the severe end of things, if you look at the eyes of somebody who has a top-down awakening, it may be more of a manic gaze or more of kind of like that hard looking through gaze, or sort of that empty black gaze that sometimes you can see in people who have harmed a lot of other people, or we might define as having some type of personality disorder like psychopathy or, something like that. Um, and so I will say that sometimes people will confuse top-down awakened people who have that sort of charisma and energy and sort of mania in there from being so top-down awakened as somebody who is quite conscious. And what it means is that they're just in a state of significant imbalance, more than anything else. The more realized somebody is, the more you're going to feel a sense of peace or stillness or, something like that from them. So, in more moderate cases of top-down awakening, we've kind of talked about, the kind of severe cases that maybe you've run across, maybe you are in that sort of category. Maybe part of your experiences kind of go in there, go into the severe end of things. But a more moderate or classic example of top-down awakening would be somebody who is sensitive, somebody who feels separated from their bodies. They have difficulty feeling, they have difficulty um, being in their body, being a part of this world, difficulty connecting to themselves, to other people, to the world. They may be an incredibly spiritual person and interested in spirituality, but because they are not in their bodies, because all of their energy is in their head, what is either going to happen is a lot of self-creation and sort of illusion or delusion. Or what more commonly will happen is that this person will have so many spiritual energies around them, so much intuition, so much guidance, so much natural spiritual capacity, but they cannot quite connect to it yet. Um, because on some level they are responding to it, but on another level they can't consciously process it yet, because how to properly connect and process that spiritual energy, that connection to the divine, connection to spirit, is through the body. It is through feeling. Um, think of the body as kind of an altar, and that is the altar from the ultimate altar from which we can do spiritual work from or have spiritual connection from. And so all the time I come into contact with with people who are so incredibly creative and imaginative and intuitive, and they have been taught by the world, by their parents, by other sources, that who they are is wrong, or maybe on a less, like, more ambiguous level, they saw that their, classmates were not seeing the world that they were, or they weren't as deeply feeling as they were. And so they shut aspects of themselves down. They shut down their feeling, they shut down their enormous hearts, they shut down that gut intuition. And so connecting to feeling, connecting to body, connecting to intuition is helpful. In that more moderate case, people will be prone to that picture of sort of being outside of their body, that kind of standing, having all the energy in the head, sort of standing on the shoulders, or kind of being a bit outside of the body, but still kind of energetically in, around, still in the field. It is much more problematic when the bulk of our energy leaves our immediate field. So that really requires an advanced spiritual worker to work with. We have all sorts of types of energy, all sorts of different places, with our ancestors, with our childhood, in the future, So it's not unusual for energy to be sort of dissipated or not fully with us. If anything, I could say that energetically, the goal of spiritual awakening is to gather all of our energy from all of those different sources and bring it back home. So we are energetically whole. We are energetically in the present moment. We no longer have parts of ourselves in the past, in the future, all these different, in all these different places. But it can get quite complex energetically if somebody is so distanced from their body that they are no longer in their field. In that case, they need a spiritual worker to um, go and, go to wherever they are and sort of retrieve that aspect of them. A lot of people who experience that moderate form of top-down awakening will be quite imaginative and creative, like I said. They will also typically have books, movies, and sort of things to distract themselves as a coping tool. And so there's nothing quite like losing yourself in a good book or a good movie. That can be an enormously healthy thing to do. We all need a bit of healthy distraction from our lives sometimes. There's just a question yet again of, is this healthy and life affirming? Or is this something that is covering up feeling, covering up trauma, covering up life difficulty that could be looked at, that could be energetically balanced out, healed, all that sort of stuff. So another common picture or a common symptom of top-down awakening is that when we aren't connected to our bodies, our thoughts tend to be quite abstract. So what does this look like? Um, I can be sometimes like this as well, but if you were to ask somebody how they were doing, um, people who are more connected to their bodies might be like, oh, I feel sad, I feel angry, something like that. People who are having a top-down awakening, their answer might be more symbolic or metaphorical, more metaphoric. It might be like, oh, I feel like Sisyphus rolling that boulder up the hill. I feel like a giant gray blob. That's sort of going into the symbolic and sort of slightly abstract rather than a direct sort of link to feeling in the body. A top-down awakening also can happen from intellectualism. And again, I am all about people who want to think in this world, especially people who want to critically think. If anybody wants to, talk about weird esoteric books, I'm always down. Um, However, what happens in top-down awakenings is that there may be that sort of abstract intellectual thought where some of the theories of spiritual awakening or of spirituality are understood, but they are not lived out. In some cases, this can look like somebody is playing a role of spirituality rather than actively participating in it, in which cases they will develop a pretty significant shadow side if they're, playing out being a omnipotent being of light. And um, what's going to happen to their daily life is every shadow is going to show itself that isn't that light that they're pretending to be. But a lot of times in a more daily kind of picture of this, it is people who kind of populate the chat rooms and message boards and stuff that a lot of people are on, because it gives people time to um, distance themselves from reality, to chat about things that they're interested in, of course. But what ends up happening is sort of that distraction from reality rather than grounding further into it, um, rather than living it and experiencing it, talking about it. I think it's wonderful to share experiences and wonderful to talk about things, wonderful to find like-minded people. But I'm reminded of an experience when I was actually, this is a long time ago, but at this point, but I was admin of a just chat room group or whatever. And what I noticed was one of the other people that was in the group was on the group all the time. They were also an admin and they were answering people no matter what they said in about 30 seconds, day or night. And so when I sat back and I kind of sat with this and I'm just like, why am I, did my shadow work about it? Um, what I noticed was that if this person were living their lives, they would be offline sometimes. They wouldn't be able to answer people so quickly. They would be doing the magic. They would be, doing this spiritual work. They would be doing the dishes. They would be living their lives fully. And so that can be kind of an everyday kind of picture of what this looks like. And also another everyday picture of what this looks like is the word salad sort of things. And so a lot of people really love word salad. And this is the abstraction, kind of the illusion of intellectual, spiritual, philosophical thought, but it doesn't have that bodily experience. It doesn't have that bodily wisdom. When we do have that lived experience, we can express things simply and well. We can come from a place of experience. When we are coming only from the head, it comes across as more abstract, more philosophical, and much less grounded. And so there are a lot of wonderful things about top-down awakenings. The first is that it is a considerable amount of energy. And so it really does set people off into exploring spiritual interests. It gives them a lot of energy to do so as well. People who are experiencing top-down awakenings will always be talking about finding a new book, a new guru, a new experience, a new vacation spot, a new, it has that sort of excitement and enthusiasm. And so it is always a question for people when I am talking, or for me, that I will share with you, when I'm talking about things like top-down awakenings and I'm discussing the symptoms, that the discussion of that isn't to form any sort of judgment against yourself or against others. It is an incredibly common form of spiritual awakening. And it makes sense in our modern world that it is so present because we tend to prize, um, you know, uh, thought and mental experience. We tend to disregard the body and feeling. Some of that is changing, but we still are very much um, kind of held within the masculine polarity. And so notice I didn't say male, masculine polarity. We all have male polarity, masculine polarity, and feminine polarity, sun, moon in first chakra. And what that means is that for a long time, we have so prized the masculine polarity that has to do philosophically with our separation from nature, our separation and shaming of our bodies, in particular our genitals and our sexual expression, our separation from feeling and intuition, the shaming of the physical human form, and the prizing of intellectualism, the prizing of logic, the prizing of materialism, the prizing of order. And so this is one of the reasons why people on spiritual paths and modern spiritual paths these days are so focused on emptiness, on, some of the non-dual stuff that isn't quite as balanced. Um, and why some of the paths that are more focused on embodiment, on sensuality, on, intuition, on kind of those feminine polarity aspects, the darker aspects of self, they're starting to come to the forefront, but they have a lot of catching up to do. And so I will say, ideally, with spiritual awakening, it is what one of my favorite authors, Marianne Woodman, would say, it is pairing the head with the body. The objective is not to, get rid of the head, off with the head, or to, prize the body or anything like that. It is to have that flow that is inherent through the body, through the feminine polarity, rise up and be met by the logic and discernment of the masculine polarity within the body. Um, so we can picture this as like a giant ocean and kind of the shores of an ocean sort of thing. And so that is the finality of spiritual awakening, is the pairing and combination of those two. In that case, we are going to go to esoteric thought. In that case, we are not emptiness. We are not a non-being. We are not just, kind of the universe expressing itself. We are emptiness and fullness simultaneously. Yes, we are connected to everything. Yes, we are connected to the universe. We are the universe expressing itself. We are consciousness itself. But at the same time, what grounding in the body does is allow for that process of individuation, where we know who we are, we know where our boundaries are, where I end and you begin, at the same time as we feel that state of connection. So teaching paradoxes is one of the hardest things to do because they need to be experienced rather than thought of. And so that is why a lot of people don't talk about them, is because we need to experience them to understand that two things that seemingly contradict one another, like I am the universe expressing itself, I am connected to all, and I'm connected to each and every one of you, but at the same time, I am an individual self who knows who she is, who knows where her limits and boundaries are. So a little bit of an aside, but I hope that that's helpful. The last thing I will mention is that for top-down awakenings, going into the body is how to balance out. And so this is typically teaching people how to feel. I have a video on this on my channel, how to feel. It is teaching, if necessary, people how to have boundaries, people how to manage their psychic abilities. I have a book, Managing Psychic Abilities, I'll put out there. After people have learned how to feel for a bit, which will let them sort of dip their toe into their bodies, they can move on to doing my Body Deva work, my book, The Body Deva, which is how to communicate with the body consciousness. And I really love doing that work and teaching that work, because people can heal and transform and really become embodied in a way that is quite balancing, and also starts to release and heal things in order for people to become more conscious. Because without the body, without working with the nervous system, without healing emotions and energetics and spirituality through the body, the emotions, physical life, belief systems are not truly going to change. They're not going to experience a shift. And so that is why quite a lot of people are stuck, is that they understand the concepts of spiritual awakening, but they haven't embodied them yet. They haven't looked towards the body, towards, kind of the stuff that is sort of lingering in their bodies that is preventing them from truly becoming conscious. There are other basic things that are really helpful for top-down awakenings. Conscious exercise, so not just zoning out and going to the gym necessarily, although that can be helpful if that's where you are, but going for a nice walk where you're paying attention to where you are, going out in nature. In my spiritual awakening guide, I have a lot of tips for uh, grounding and that sort of stuff. But good exercise, yoga, all that sort of stuff, learning how to have a healthy diet, all that sort of basic stuff that a lot of us know, can be enormously helpful. But the big thing for top-down awakenings is figuring out how the person can start to get energetically into the body and resolving whatever patterns might be preventing that from happening. And a lot of times it's just that the person doesn't know how to process their emotions in an embodied way yet. I will mention that for a certain percentage of people, that there are deeper spiritual syndromes that are preventing them from being in their bodies. And the biggest one is that um, sometimes people have had experiences of this world where a part of themselves is simply given up, or they don't wish to be here anymore. And those parts of ourselves can be worked with compassionately and to be understood. And when those parts of ourselves are compassionately understood, they can have options. They can understand that, hey, I'm in a human body for a short period of time. Maybe I should, enjoy myself or be a part of this world a bit more. Um, and so a lot of spiritualities are very top down because they're putting somebody in the place of fantasy or perpetuating kind of illusion, perpetuating wounding rather than healing anything or really looking at anything. And so it is very much a choice for the person of whether they kind of want to go below the neck, um, or if it may be perfectly fine for them to remain in a state where they just are enjoying themselves on chat rooms or whatever they're doing with themselves. So whether that person is you or another person, um, deciding what is the right step for you, what you would like to do with yourself, where your awakening is sort of taking you to next. What I can say is that learning how to feel, learning how to be more embodied is truly wonderful. It can allow a lot of peace. It can allow a lot of deep reflection. It can allow for feelings of deep connection to self and to everything around you. And so that is the potential of correcting this imbalance, because somebody having a top-down awakening already has a huge amount of energy, a huge amount of potential. It's just all stuck up here. If it starts to go into the body, that can very much spread out into the life in a truly wonderful way. I hope that this has helped you in some way, and thank you as always for listening, for reading my work, and for however you decide to interact.